is so worried, why our judge is so worried, why each of you is so worried. Because now there is no other instrument by which you may change something or say something. And therefore, the consequence of this homogenization of political parties also is that therefore it is now very difficult to expect a reform from within the political system because they are all the same. But on the other hand, their hold on the political system is such that reform from outside is also very difficult. As you have seen in Anna Hazare's case. So, for the reform from outside to work, the situation will really have to become of a tectonic scale. When the plates shift under the earth and an earthquake arises. But for the situation to become that desperate to enable a solution, we do not know what the outcome will be at that time. Because who will be there, how strong his hands will be to hold the country together when the situation reaches such a catastrophic condition. And I believe this is the reason that there are many lessons from this. And I will take 10 minutes of your time to draw your attention to some of the basic premises which have gone wrong since the time of Dr. Ambedkar and the Constitution being framed. And if you read the Constituent Assembly debates, they are of a different order than what we see today. And unless those basic things are set right, I personally feel that we will just continue to hold seminars and things will continue to go the way they are going. The first of these is, please do not be carried away by your own propaganda. We keep saying we are the largest democracy in the country, but much of what we see today in Parliament and outside is not democracy, it is disarray. Very often when we were sitting in Parliament, there will be persons, visitors from abroad, from East Europe, from Western Europe. There is a particular portion of the Rajya Sabha in which they will sit, or the Lok Sabha, as visitors to see Indian democracy functioning. And people are shouting and screaming. So very, you think quickly, that is democracy, that is disarray. Second thing we must see is that infections spread. What used to happen in state legislatures as an exception became the rule in state legislatures. But we always say, no, to Bihar mein ho raha hai, arey bhaiya wo Lucknow mein ho raha hai. But the same people are now in Parliament, and so what used to happen in state legislatures now happens in Parliament. So infections spread. They spread faster than anybody could have imagined. You see the spread of galloping cancer like corruption. How it has spread. I remember only 30 years ago, when I started writing on these matters, my father, who had been a civil servant, he said, this is not possible what you are writing. I have worked in the government for 35 years. It could never happen. Are you sure about your facts? And just see, if you talk today about an honest minister, people say, "Arey bhaiya, are you sure about your facts?" And that infection, the scale becomes much greater. I know when Anthony had to leave his office, the article I had written was only about 5 crores. Bofors was only about 64 crores. अब ये राजा के 64 करोड़ से तो दांत भी गिने नहीं होंगे. And what is worse is that infection spreads to all institutions in society. That is the national service which General V.K. Singh has done. He has shown us just by lifting the lid, that the same type of corruption, the same type of factionalism has entered the highest reaches of the Indian army. So you can imagine, we are talking about Assam. What will the Indian army do vis-a-vis China? And very often the countries are misled from the gravity of the situation that Hanuman Chaudhary was pointing out to, because of a very important factor, that their adversary is preoccupied with other things. The decline in violence in Kashmir is because Pakistan today is preoccupied with its own problem. So we think, dekha, we have solved Kashmir. Because the basic thing has not been attended to. Similarly, in the case of China, China has today benchmarked itself against the United States. That is why it is not looking at India. But one slap and it will be the same problem. And then for 30 years we will again be having reports as to who was responsible. A UPA, NDA, UPA 1, UPA 2, Indira Gandhi, Pandit Nehru, same report. And the problems go on swelling. And that individuals, actually speaking, cannot handle those problems. Even collections of individuals cannot handle the problem. You and I cannot handle the problem of the Bangladeshi infiltration. It is on such a scale. It can only be handled by an efficient state, by a determined, clear-headed state, the state of India. And that is the problem I want you to focus on when I start on what we have to do. And finally, there is nobody in India has time for the real problems that are around the corner. For instance, China. China does not now say that it has changed its security doctrine completely. First, it used to be war within China, by drawing the invader into China and then finishing him by guerrilla warfare. That was the Maoist doctrine. Then it became war at the borders of China. Then it became a war at the borders of China under high technology conditions. That was Deng Xiaoping's reformulation. Then it became war by managing the periphery. That means those countries that can affect China. And that periphery now includes the United States also. And they said this occupying a territory, going into other people's territory with lakhs of soldiers, this is an old warfare. We don't believe in this now. We must, they say, hit the acupuncture points of another society. I mean, you can find volumes and volumes of China on this. We will go and put up some tanks in the northeast. But they say we will hit, India is an integrating, modernizing society. Therefore, if we will hit those points, which are the nodes of Indian integration. For instance, they listed 20 power grid through cyber warfare. Power grid, air traffic control, railway traffic control, financial transactions, banking transactions, broadcasting, telephony, 20 such items. But nobody cares. I remember, I'll give you just one instance. Because this would be not, you can imagine, this is done in 2 minutes. In 2 minutes, all these systems are disrupted. Therefore, when I was there, I started firewalling exercises for firewalling our infrastructure. And by discussions with Mr. Brajesh Mishra, who was our National Security Advisor at that time, a memorandum was issued a secret order was issued by Rajesh Mishra as National Security Advisor that no Chinese equipment will be used in Indian telecom infrastructure. Because the Chinese put bugs into the thing which can be activated by satellites. And then the whole communication is disrupted in 1 second flat. It is therefore banned in the UK. This is banned in the United States. Government changed, the file went to Bharat, to the new government. He endorsed the previous decision. 15 days later he reversed it after some people met him in Chennai. So now Chinese equipment is in our telecom infrastructure, and we are thinking of that only infiltrators from across the border will come to disintegrate us. But nobody has the time. I narrated this instance in the presence of the Prime Minister in Parliament. Raja is sitting here. The scientists who were working on this matter have come to me, the defense forces people have come to me, sir, please go to the Prime Minister, tell him that all that exercise has been abandoned. And then in the rulers, a culture of avoidance comes. When you don't attend to problems, then you minimize the problem. And in society, the culture of acceptance comes. And that sets the stage for complete disintegration. Today, if one of these corrupt ministers came in, people will stand up. We have accepted them. But can you imagine Gandhiji's time? Can you imagine the Constituent Assembly's time that 3 ministers in 2 states in the north are today implicated in the murder of their mistresses? हम कहते जी सत्य मिल जाते, गांधी जी की फोटो लगाते, वंदे मातरम गाते, और सिचुएशन ये है. So the last point in this, and then I'll come to what we should do, is to remember that their evil is done with our hands. Please don't think that these are leaders we have elected, or by not voting we have allowed them to be elected. Could these corporate frauds have happened without the active connivance and collaboration of chartered accountants? Or their financial auditors or advisors? Could ministers make money without the civil servants doing the paperwork? Could criminals thrive in India without lawyers, the best lawyers being available to them? Can a judge be bribed without the intercession of lawyers? Is there a bribe which has been received before it has been given? Therefore, that is the place to begin. It is our own conduct. You want the country to survive? We must make sure that our conduct, whatever the consequences, is one that befits something we call our motherland. The second point is that the root of this problem is the legislatures. Because in the Indian constitutional system, it is from the legislature that the executive is chosen. That executive, the cabinet, the council of ministers, the ruling party, they set the ethos of the civil service, they select the judges, they develop liaisons with various kinds across institutions, they appoint the vice chancellors. So they set the tone. And what is the catchment area for the executive? It is the legislature. And in this, there is a simple law, the Indiresan law. Professor P. Indiresan, one of our great technologists, he once asked me, why do you think, what is the explanation for our current situation? So I was going to say something about caste. It is not an in the essence law.